Hey transformative leaders and trauma survivors, it's Ophelia lark-woodbury of thehappymedium.com. Today I'm going to share with you 3 ways to help you begin to navigate your journey in healing from complex trauma. And be sure to stick around to the end because I have a little surprise for you. Dive in, I want to remind you, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe by hitting that subscribe button and click that notification bell so that you'll never miss a video when I upload new content every Wednesday. So how do we begin to heal from complex trauma when we discover that it's something that's happened to us? Maybe we've heard somebody else's story about their journey through complex trauma, and we get the sense that, man, that sure sounds a lot like something I went through. I know that's kind of how it happened for me. Mine kind of happened in stages, but that was really one of the ways that I became aware. And so, how do we begin to do that? How do we begin to, start our healing journey? Well, I always take the approach of mind, body, and soul. And so let's start with the mind, and within that, let's start with attachment. We're going to talk about attachment, memory, and the self, how the self is formed. So we are wired. When we're born, we're created for connection. We're wired for connection. We're born to be relational. And so in infancy, when a child is born, they are born to seek close proximity to the caregiver. The nature-nurture goal is to meld the innate need for connection with the environmental input that creates this sort of natural relational pattern for secure attachment. So secure attachment is the social, behavioral, the biological, the psychological components of our attachment system. And they come together to create this way of relating, so that a child seeks out a caregiver or a support system. And if the child does not, it depends on whether or not how that parent responds to that child. So we're talking about secure attachment, so let's just kind of follow that line of thought for a minute. In secure attachment, the child does what's natural. So if they get upset or they feel fear or they're confused about something, more than likely they're going to be crying. So the expectancy in secure attachment is that the caregiver is going to come to the aid of that child and soothe or comfort that child. And so by creating that type of pattern, the child then comes to understand that, oh, okay, so I can trust in this system. Through consistency, that child realizes I can trust. So whenever I feel sad or frustrated or whatever, I can return to this caregiver for support. That is called a secure base. But in relational, repeated relational trauma, it shatters that experience of a secure attachment. So in order for a child to feel to be soothed or to feel okay, they have to respond with their own solutions. And typically these are what we call insecurely attached solutions. So a child might respond in an anxious way or a dismissive, avoidant way, or they may have a disorganized response to the caregiver. And the differences between those three, in an anxious response, the child is typically what you would see, very hyper vigilant. You see a lot of kids who have separation anxiety, sort of those kind of symptoms, where they're scared the caregiver is going to abandon them, or maybe because the caregiver did abandon them, they're highly anxious, they're super highly alert, and they're almost really clingy, and they're constantly searching, how can I get this person to soothe me? I really, really need it. And that is their aim, or their solution, their pursuit of being soothed. The dismissive, avoidant type, they realize that they probably have no hope of getting the caregiver to attend to them. So they create their own protections, they create their own defenses. They sort of ignore or avoid engaging with that caregiver if at all possible. And they just kind of go their own way. They're kind of like the quiet ones who are sitting around and they don't really ask anybody for help. They kind of just create their own help. And the last, probably the most disheartening response that you typically see in kids who are more severely abused or neglected is the disorganized, where there's sort of this what they call closeness distance problem. And it's when the child really craves closeness, but they know that they're not going to get it, so they keep their distance because they don't want to get hurt physically or emotionally or mentally. But they don't stop there. They create this character, this persona, this false self, because the person that has been ignored, they don't like that person. That person to them is damaged. Something is wrong with that person. That's why the grown-up doesn't like me. That's why the grown-up doesn't want to respond to me. So I don't want to be that person. And they become somebody else. They create someone else. Like, okay, I'm fine. I'm this person. Everybody loves me. You know, I have these good qualities about myself, and they buy into that and they start to live as that false self and not as the person that they truly are, because they believe that that person is damaged. So let's talk about memory a little bit. Attachment determines how we're able to regulate our emotions because it is embedded in our biology and through our early relationships. So if we had a parent who was consistently comforting and validating and responsive to our needs when we were angry or upset or confused about something, then that response system gets embedded into our biology. So we are essentially the parent has taught us how to regulate our emotions when we get we have emotional experiences, because they model that for us. So how to soothe ourselves or how to calm down, those kinds of things. But if on the other hand, if you had a parent who was angry and rejecting and invalidating, sometimes they paid attention to you, sometimes they ignored you, that type of response system also gets embedded into the nervous system or the biology through modeling, because you essentially learn that's how you respond to people who respond to you in that way. So you're not sure how to respond. You take an anxious or avoidant or a sort of disorganized type of responding to that person's attention to you or lack of attention to you. So the limbic brain, this is the center brain. We call this, we have the lower brain, which we call the reptilian brain or the brain stem. And then in the center we have the limbic system, which includes the amygdala and the hippocampus, amongst some other parts of the brain. But the amygdala is what stores the emotional memory. So over time, if a child is constantly under distress, whether they experience the world as safe or unsafe, but let's just say over time, through repeated relational trauma, they are under distress or they're in distress, they're going to have an amygdala that becomes hypersensitive. It's hyper alert, and so it's sending out all of these alarms and these signals of threat, even when there may not even be a real threat. The threat may just be perceived. And when it's a matter of survival, the amygdala kicks in such that it almost shuts off the higher level brain, which is called the neocortex, where you are able to access problem solving, decision making, you're able to think. But when the amygdala takes precedence, then the person immediately goes into fight, flight, or freeze. There's no thinking about it. It's about how can I protect myself. So let's talk about the self real briefly before we jump into the second step, which is healing the body. So our identity, our self, is formed in early relationships. And so how we learn how to identify ourselves, or know who we are, we know ourselves to be, is through the early relationships that we've had with our caregivers or our early support system. And as the case in repeated relational trauma, the identity suffers. It's shattered. It's damaged to the point to where a person really doesn't understand who they are in relation to someone else, in relation to the rest of the world. And so this can in turn create problems trusting other people, trusting people to be honest about the interaction that they're having with you. And so a person may avoid relationships altogether, or putting themselves in a position where they can be vulnerable in a relationship. And so it's healing that attachment system. That's the goal as we move forward. So the second way to heal complex trauma, we finally made it to step 2. The second way to heal the body from complex trauma is by aligning the body with the reality of what we know now. So now that we know how our brains work in response to previous relationships, now we know that, okay, so I need to align my body with the reality of what's happening in the here and the now. And we can do that through various techniques. We can do that through progressive muscle relaxation, through grounding, through anchoring, through deep breathing, and sort of a plethora of techniques that somatically target our inner experience. And we're going to do a brief grounding practice here at the end, so you guys hang in there because we're almost there. So the third step to healing complex trauma is through soul care. This is nurturing your spiritual self through soul care practices. So let me outline what that would look like. First of all, I want to say that I have 2 crucial downloads for this particular soul care exercise. And you're going to want to use these to help bring this alive for you. This whole thing that we've been talking about, the brain and the understanding attachment. Well, these 2 worksheets, it's going to make it come alive for you when you're actually working through it, and you're really starting to see, wow, I believe this about myself, but this is what God says about me. Like, how can I make those things align? And these worksheets will help you with that. So soul care basically is using what I call the daily inventory versus the Philippians 4:8, what God says about you. So daily inventory of character flaws. These are the things that you either believe about yourself, or these are things that you've learned to do in response to the trauma. So maybe you've learned to say bad things about people, or gossip or whatever. If gossiping is one of the character flaws, or maybe you don't feel loved, maybe you don't feel like somebody else deserves love, so you treat people like they shouldn't be treated, just because you think they deserve. Well, I mean, they didn't treat me right, so why on earth should I forgive them? So maybe you struggle with unforgiveness. All those kinds of things, character flaws. On this sheet, I will have a lot of those listed out for you, so you don't have to go thinking about, okay, what's a flaw that I have? I'll have a lot of them listed out. Maybe there may be some that are not on there, but these will kind of jog your memory to where you can come up with your own. You may say, well, I don't see one on here that I struggle with, but these really have put me in the mindset of what a character flaw is, so I kind of know, and then you can just kind of mark your own on that sheet. But then you compare them to Philippians 4:8, where the Bible says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is lovely and pure, right, excellent, praiseworthy, to think on these things. And then Paul even goes on to say, and whatever you've heard and seen in me, do put into practice. So we think on it first, we get our mind right, kind of like how we talked about in the first step. And then we begin to practice. So through this, this worksheet will help you to start practicing what you say about yourself or how you've learned to respond that's been maladaptive versus what God says about you and how He wants you to respond. The second thing is the attachment healing relationships and soul care worksheet, where you start to set a goal. First of all, you start with gratitude, like the things that I'm thankful for. It's what I call a TOG. It's the today's gratitude gram. I call it a TOG, T-O-G-G. Anyway, probably cheesy, but I don't care. and then you go on and you select a method or a strategy where you're going to start to build healthy relationships. So remember we talked about how unhealthy or insecure attachments are formed early in life. Well, this is your opportunity to, maybe even for the first time, form secure attachments by seeking out healthy relationships and healthy support systems. And so the method and the strategy on the attachment healing worksheet will help you begin that process, whether it's through therapy or a healing support group or a healing arts group or a pilgrimage or volunteering. However you can begin to build healthy relationships with other people, or a Bible study group, particularly with the body of Christ, I'm going to recommend, because as believers, we grow in our spiritual journey when we are connected to other believers who are growing in their spiritual journeys. So something that helps you to grow closer to Christ while you're building those healthy relationships. Also, soul care, things that you can do. You're making God the center of your healing. And you're doing that through examining your day, what we call it, through a practice called examine. How you've seen God throughout your day. Maybe there's some lessons that you've learned, some struggles you've had, but you recognize how God was maybe trying to get your attention to do something else, or maybe you allowed God to have His way, and He showed you something that you're going to use from now on. And then you can make a prayer request at the end. So those two sheets are really going to bring soul care alive for you. So I recommend that you download those and you begin to work on that process, because it's going to be transformative. This is what makes it transformative. So you just learned 3 ways to start the healing journey through complex trauma. And now I'm going to walk you through a 90-second practice for grounding, a grounding practice that helps you to feel what it's like to recenter yourself when you start to feel dysregulated or abreactive. It's called Lose Your Mind and Come to Your Senses. And basically, it just means that you need to attend to your senses. What's going on in your body? Get the focus off your thoughts, the things that may be causing you to distress in this moment. 3, 2, 1 senses. So, name 3 things that you see. So you can look around. Maybe you can see something on your wall, or maybe you're outside. Look around in nature. That's 1. That's 2. That's 3. Now what's different? Do you feel more relaxed? Do you feel more in the here and the now? That technique should get you back to the here and the now. And off the thoughts, the things that are swimming around in your head that's related to the past, that has nothing to do with right now. So, I hope that helps you. Well, I hope today's video was helpful for you, and if it was, be sure to show some love by hitting that like button and share with your friends. And drop a comment to let me know what you thought about today's action-packed session. I really love your feedback, guys. I enjoy when you comment and you let me know how these videos are helping you. It really does help inform the videos that I choose to make going forward. Last but not least, if you haven't already, subscribe by hitting that subscribe button now and click that notification bell so that you'll never miss a video when I upload new content on Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here, and I will see you next week. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.